Hi friends, this is SURABHI, registered physiotherapist in Ontario, Canada, and pregnancy and postpartum athleticism coach. I'm also the owner of The Passionate Physio, where I provide virtual fitness coaching and physiotherapy services worldwide, as well as my base fitness membership, which helps you feel strong and confident moving in your body. So today I'm going to be talking about troubleshooting your pelvic floor symptoms during exercise, during higher level exercise, as you're returning to jumping and impact exercises like running or more explosive movements like box jumps. So let's start from the beginning. When you have pelvic floor symptoms during an exercise, it does not mean that your pelvic floor is getting worse. It does not mean that you're doing the exercise wrong. It could mean many things. So that's what I'm going to talk about today. When it's often the case where we're not feeling too many symptoms in our pelvic floor until we add a certain level of load. That's called our capacity. Once we are beyond our capacity of our muscles, we start to maybe experience some soreness or some leaking or some heaviness, depending on what you've got going on in your pelvic floor, whether you've got tears, scar tissue, prolapse, incontinence, whether you've had a cesarean and you have scar tissue around there. All of that can be triggered when you're beyond your capacity. And it doesn't mean that that's a bad thing if you've blown past your capacity. It gives you a lot of good information, actually. It tells you where your current capacity is so that you can work within that range, push that range, and not blow through that range. So let's start talking a little bit about other reasons that your pelvic floor symptoms or your symptoms can come back. And so we talked about, blowing past your capacity. And let's talk also about your strategy or your technique. There are ways that we can modify your breath, your posture in jumping, in running, in order to reduce your symptoms. And I'm going to show you a few strategies of that today. But there's also another reason why you could be symptomatic. It could be where you are. For example, if you have your monthly menstrual cycle back, it could be where you are in your cycle. Some people experience more symptoms during ovulation, and some people experience more symptoms during the week before their menstruations, a menstrual cycle, or during their period itself. And so understanding, is there a cyclical pattern, or am I always noticing more symptoms right around ovulation? Or am I always noticing more symptoms on my period? And if that's the case, understanding that there might be a hormonal impact to your symptoms as well. And it doesn't mean it's a bad thing. It just means that that's something to notice, so that you're aware that maybe your hardest workouts are not going to be during that time where you're symptomatic, whether it's ovulation or whether it's around your period. Okay, so those are some reasons. And another big reason is, are you just fatigued that day? Are you just having a bad day? Or did you not sleep well last night? Or are you having a really high anxiety or stress day where your body is just not, working with you, where you're feeling like everything just feels hard? And on those days when you're increasing your impact, when you're adding more load to your body, you may find that your body's not feeling it. It's like, I'm not ready for this. And so understanding that any given day, your body's not the exact same on any given day. Neither is mine. None of our bodies are the exact same. It varies throughout the monthly cycle. It also varies day to day based on how we've slept, how well hydrated we are, whether we're constipated. If you haven't pooped and you're jumping and running, think about that. That takes up a lot of space in your pelvic area, and that can add more pressure into your pelvic floor. So if you're underhydrated, undernourished, you're not pooping regularly, if you're experiencing, I think it's safe to say that you likely are experiencing a lot of stress right now, and we know that stress can impact your pain levels. It can impact how your muscles are functioning. So you may need a more adequate warm-up. And I'm not just talking about like warming up your physical body and getting your heart rate up, but even just getting into some of the pelvic floor warm-up. So stretching your butt back, pointing your butt to the ceiling, letting it open up, doing some of the thread the needles to help your thoracic spine, which is where your rib cage is, help your thoracic spine open up. So this is one of my favorite exercises for that. You can do it with a straight arm, so straight arm or bent elbow, whatever feels good for your chest and shoulders. And you're gonna essentially thread that arm through, inhale, open, and exhale, thread that arm through. And this is a really fantastic way to improve your thoracic mobility as well as decrease pelvic floor tension. Now, why is thoracic mobility important? Let's say you are running. When you are running, you need to be able to breathe deeply. And if this is really stiff from going back to anxiety and stress, when we're stressed, we don't tend to breathe nice and deeply. So we tend to hold a lot of tension in our chest. And if we're running and we're not able to breathe freely through here, guess what? There can be added pressure now further below into your pelvic floor or your abdomen too. So really making sure you're adequately warmed up, even if you're like, before I never would have had to do this. That might be the case, but right now, today, or this moment, you may need to do that warm up. Doesn't mean you'll always have to do this. It just means that that's how it is right now, okay? So I wanted to share that so that you understood that it's not just at pelvic floor in isolation, that everything plays together really well. Another area that we often forget to warm up is our hips. So really doing some hip swings forward and backward can help us warm up our hips. And then also, you know, doing 10 times per side, for example, that's a nice easy number to remember. You can try it right now and see what it feels like. You can also try ins and outs. So going in and out, warming up the inner thighs and outer hips. And you would do, of course, both legs with this, going in and out and front and back. So those are some really great ways to kind of warm up the hips prior to more dynamic load, and making sure that you're ready for that load and you're not jumping, you're not skipping steps. You still need to build your base of strength. You still need to build your base of impact capacity, your ability to handle impact. You can't just jump from, you know, nothing to everything. And if that's what you tried, then it may explain some of the symptoms as well. So making sure you're adequately warmed up is one great way to make sure that when you're actually adding impact, your pelvic floor can respond more dynamically and it's not held in this contracted position the entire time. I'm going to show you some strategies to use while you're running itself, right? So let's say I'm going for a run. Here are some strategies that you can use in terms of your posture. You can try leaning forward, right? So your tits over toes, like Brianna Battles likes to call it. So you're leaning forward and you're not just sticking your butt out leaning like this. Your entire body is leaning forward from your ankles up. So it's not just your hips, it's your whole ankles. You're leaning forward, you're bringing your chest over your toes. And what that does is it actually helps you to make your glutes, your butt muscles more available, to allow your glutes to be used more. Versus in this way, there's a lot of up and down bounce. We want running to take us forward, not up and down. So even just changing the angle of that really helps to change the load, reduce the load on your pelvic floor. In the same way, it helps you use your glutes a little bit more too. Another strategy that you can use, that's the same strategy actually you can use while jumping. If you are skipping and you're feeling a lot of symptoms, lean forward, bring your chest forward and see if that helps. Another strategy you can use both with running and with jumping and skipping is to unclench your butt and your pelvic floor. You can even try like a 50% release of the contraction when you're standing. And so you're going to release and then you're going to jump. And while you're jumping, if you're feeling symptoms, you're just going to think about unclenching a tiny bit more. There we go. And say, how does this feel? Because remember, I was talking about we want a dynamic pelvic floor that can bounce with us. We don't want that harsh pelvic floor that's holding ourselves really rigid as we're bouncing. Just like our legs, we want them to be springy. We want our pelvic floor to be springy as well. So if we're holding our pelvic floor in an excessively clenched position while we're running and jumping, that alone may increase your symptoms during those moves. And now what you would do when you're running is the exact same. You'd unclench your butt cheeks, unclench your pelvic floor by, let's say, 50%, and then you're gonna go for your run and see, how does that feel? You might feel at first like things are really like loose. That's okay. We're not trying to be tight all the time. Your body is going to be more responsive and dynamic if your muscles are starting from a position of rest than if they're starting from a position of contraction all the time. So, you know, another strategy that I wanted to talk about around that is your breath, right? So how are you breathing? And are you breathing? Are you breath holding? Are you chest breathing? Are you apical breathing? How are you breathing during your run? How are you breathing during your skipping? So one strategy that you can use, for example, while jumping, is to exhale as you land. So that as you shock absorb with your legs and your pelvic floor, you're exhaling to help your pelvic floor stay connected and stay contracted during that landing. Not in an excessive sense, but just enough to prevent leaks and enough to prevent heaviness symptoms into your pelvic floor. So you're gonna inhale and exhale as you land, okay? So this is very quick because it's a jump. So I'm gonna slow that down a little bit. So you're gonna inhale as you take off and exhale as you land. And you're gonna try that strategy. So you can try quick exhales as you land when you're skipping. You can try that quick exhale, and that's gonna help activate your quick muscle fibers, your fast twitch muscle fibers in your pelvic floor to help keep the gates shut so you're not leaking, you're not feeling excessive heaviness symptoms. But the key in order to keep them shut is to let them open when you're inhaling. So it's a quick inhale, exhale. So when you inhale, it opens, and when you exhale, it closes. So, and that might be really hard for you to practice at a faster jump speed. So what you're gonna do is slow it down with your squat jumps. Inhale and exhale to land. Inhale as you take off, exhale as you land. And so that might be one way for you to build capacity. The same goes for box jumps. I don't have a big box here to practice on. I just have a step stool. So what you're gonna do is you're gonna inhale as you take off, and you can even use your hands. You can bring your arms back, or you can even do this with your arms. So using your arms for momentum can be a really great way to help normalize that jumping movement and also help with your capacity, your pelvic floor's capacity. So you're gonna inhale and exhale as you land. And you're gonna pause in between, inhale and exhale as you land. And that's a fantastic way to practice your pelvic floor capacity. You can even do the same thing, jumping down, letting yourself shock absorb with your legs as well, because remember, it's not just your pelvic floor that does these moves, it's your legs. So when your legs are stronger, your glutes are stronger, it also helps to take some of the load off of your pelvic floor. And so, you know, going back to what are other causes of symptoms, there are so many causes. You know, is this your last round? Is this your last set? Are you just getting the point of fatigue and blowing past your capacity where your body's like, I was really good to rep 8, and then that third set of rep 9 and 10 was just too much for me. And it doesn't mean that you have to necessarily stop the exercise. It might mean that you just say, can I switch it up at all? Can I choose a smaller box jump, for example, for the last 2 reps? Or can I breathe a little bit more intentionally for these last 2 reps? Or can I give myself a micro break so that I'm a bit more rested before doing those last 2 reps? So those are all strategies that you can use. If you're going out for a run and you're feeling really great for the first 2 miles, and then that after 2 miles, you're like starting to feel symptomatic. Or let's say you're feeling really good for 5 miles, and after that, you're feeling symptomatic. Allow yourself a break and just say, like, I'm gonna walk, I'm gonna do some of these, you know, cat-cows on a bench. You're gonna do some intentional pelvic floor releases, some hip swings, and even some deep squats might be helpful. Sitting down on a stool obviously can work, or even sitting down on a curb and just having your legs out and feeling that stretch open up, or sitting down on a step, that really works, and feeling everything open up through there. And then try running again and see if that micro break and that little rest to open up some of the tense muscles in your pelvic floor actually helps. And let's see if, you know, that really helps to give your pelvic floor a little bit more support through getting that break and that rest in order to let yourself recover, okay? And so the last thing that I want to talk about is to make sure that you're not increasing the volume of your running too rapidly if you are running. So we aim to, research shows, you know, about 10% increase in volume per week. We don't increase volume and speed at the exact same time. So if you're like, I have been running 2 miles and now I want to do 2.4 miles, you know, 10% increase, great. However, you're not going to do 2.4 mile run and increase, you know, add in intervals at the same time. Choose one or the other, because when you're increasing speed and volume at the same time, that can also increase your symptoms or just increase risk of injury in other areas of our bodies, knees, shins, shin splints, hip injuries, all sorts of other things. So you want to take it gradual and understand that you're also not just looking to see how you feel during your run, but also after. How are you the same day in the evening or the next day and the 2 days after your run? How are your symptoms in your pelvic floor? Are you feeling good? Are you feeling sore anywhere? Oftentimes for me, after my runs, I'll feel a little bit of left low back pain. That's because my left glute is always my weaker side. So this is the side that I'm really targeting on strengthening, so that when I start to add in more running and more increase my run volume, I have a bit more endurance in this muscle. And so endurance is another conversation. Is sometimes we're really strong in our glutes, but they lack the endurance to last a 5-mile run. They lack the endurance to last even a 2-mile run, because with distance running comes more reps. It's not just 3 sets of 10 or 5 sets of 10. It is a lot of repetitive load. So even practicing high load or low load, high volume exercises can be helpful. So if you're doing this is a really good one, that's really simple. You can do, for example, a squat hold, and you're gonna practice this movement here. And so you're just feeling the burn in both glutes, and you're building up your volume here. So instead of saying do sets of 10, you're just gonna go until you fatigue, and then you're gonna switch sides. And then you're gonna take a break. You're gonna do a minute break, and then you're gonna go back on there and do another set until fatigue. So when we start to push our endurance, we really wanna make sure we're getting to fatigue and doing low enough load, making it easy enough that you can actually do enough reps, not just 8 or 12 reps, but more than 20 reps, okay? So those are some strategies there. Let me just see, I had a list of things to talk about for this one. And yeah, this is not a good week for you to add in impact. Go back to week 6. Everyone's timeline is gonna be a little bit different. So even honoring where you are in your monthly cycle, if you have it right now, and where you are in your headspace, how you've slept the night before, what energy you woke up with, what weather is like outside, if it's super hot and muggy out, or if it is really cold out or gray out, it might impact our mood and our energy levels as well. So there's so many factors. We use pelvic floor symptoms or any symptoms as just feedback, as information. It's not telling us that our bodies are breaking down or getting worse. It's just information that we need to recognize, notice, and say, okay, what are we gonna do differently to decrease these symptoms? I shared some strategies that you can use with running, hinging forward so that your tits are over your toes. You can also try breathing differently, so you're exhaling as you land. You can't really do that for running. You can't go exhale with each landing. It's more for jumps, box jumps, it works really well. It works to a certain extent for skipping as well, but it is really hard to keep that timing up, especially with higher speeds. So you practice with more of that like box jump or even squat jump style, or even single leg squat jump style. You're gonna practice exhaling as you land, if that strategy works for you, because not everybody needs that breath strategy. Some people just with the correction of leaning forward a little bit more in their run, that works really well. And then the other thing that you can try is unclenching from your glutes and your pelvic floor and your abs just a little bit before you start your run, before you start your jump, so that your baseline level of tension in those muscles isn't like this. It's a bit more relaxed, so that it has more capacity to handle load. So I hope that was helpful. If you want to connect, I would love to connect with you. I'm on Instagram at The Passionate Physio. I have my fitness membership called BASE. BASE stands for Be Active, Strong, and Energized, because that is my goal for you throughout my membership, is to feel really good in your body and feel strong. And those are some ways that you can access support for me. I have a free weekly newsletter as well, where I share tons of information. And in general, if this was helpful for you, I'm really glad to hear that. I know this entire program from Bree is going to be incredible and support so many people. And I'm honored to be a part of it. Thank you so much. Again, this is SURABHI, physiotherapist and fitness coach from The Passionate Physio. I'd love to connect with you, and I wish you all the very best. Thank you.